Hurst Competition Plus shifters. You can actually buy every single parts of these shifters as a replacement. What I did was buy the Master Rebuild Kit, which comes with pretty much everything you need for the restoration. Shims, bolts, washers, there's even a small tube of grease that goes in there. All the bolts are replaced. The only thing that they don't have is the what I call the gates or the shifter plates here, the main body, and of course the main parts in there, which are called carrier and the receiver. If you want to know more details on each part and how to disassemble and reassemble, I highly recommend you see the Gearbox video channel. Everything's in there. He has, I think, 3 videos about that. That's how I learned the most. This one is an original 1970 to 73 factory shifter that they used in Ford's top loader, mainly Mustangs and I think Torinos. Wow! Ford decided to include in 1970 a factory Hurst shifter, and they were different than the later style shifter. That's why you can see the main difference here is this type of offset. They basically have your piece here, which is called the receiver, and they crudely welded an offset steel plate to this other part of the receiver, and the straight handle, which is different from the aftermarket and the 69s, which has this welded, curved, in a lot of weird shapes handle that's welded to the whole receiver, so you cannot remove just the handle without disassembling the whole shifter, which I don't really particularly like. This one here is held on with these 2 shim plates. As you can see, this handle was pretty badly bent. Since I have to replate this anyways, there are a lot of bubbles on this chrome, a lot of damage. I'm probably gonna have to re-chrome it anyways. These are called isolators. It's basically a steel plate with a rubber pad inside, and it's just held with pressure. You cannot, if I pull it as strong as I can, it will not come out. Another really cool thing about these factory style shifters is that your backup light switch bracket is integrated into the side piece of the main casing, because otherwise you have to buy the aftermarket bracket, which is, again, in Canadian dollars, it's almost $90. So let's start by disassembling the whole thing. I'm going to do an accelerated video about it because I don't want to go into too much in depth about how to do those things. Gearbox video already has everything you need to do this, but I'm going to still comment on how you can probably do this at home. If I'm not too clumsy, I should be able to do this. So in order to remove those these bushings, they're really rigid plastic. I don't know if there's an easier way to do it, but I used my heat gun until I pretty much melted the bushing, and then that whole bolt came out.
The hole's too small, but for some reason these guys, they won't give up.
So in order to be able to remove this shifter stick, according to my readings, you're supposed to insert feeler gauges or shims, really thin shims, slide it between the shifter and those little isolators, and the shifter should come out.
Drink the juice. Please drink the juice.
No!
I will ask you nicely.
Alright, so now I'm going to remove these bolts, these nuts here, these nuts, and should be able to lift the receiver, I think. See, I'm hearing a lot of crunching in there, and that bolt here shouldn't be that hard to remove at all. This shifter was factory installed in a 1971 Mercury Cyclone or a Ford Torino. It's still a 4-speed top-loader transmission, so I don't know. Maybe it'll work. It's just sometimes it just depends on the length and shape of the rods. So we'll see. But other than that, it's the same exact shifter. Oh wow. See all that nasty crap that's in there. So there you have it. All the parts are degreased, and now I'm letting them soak into a rust remover for a couple hours.
Approximately 10 hours later.
These two L-shaped black plastic parts that you see here are actually a jig, 3D printed from a file made available by Paul from Gearbox Video. Their purpose is to help with the reassembly of the carrier and receiver assembly. Mainly you have to slide two very hard springs inside the other receiver, which is pretty hard to do. Luckily, I printed two of those in case of failure. That spring has so much tension and the plastic gave up under the tension. As soon as I tried to push it down, it just found some, I guess there's a weak spot in there, and it just got stuck here and it wouldn't budge. That's a shame because the idea is really good, but I think if you could machine this piece out of steel or maybe aluminium, that would work way better because you wouldn't have this really flimsy plastic. Alright, the spring is moved. Come on. I think it worked. It did work. So here's the final assembly. Took quite a while. It's about an hour of work if you're like me and have never done it. The gaps here are correct. I think you're supposed to have like 15 thousandths of an inch, and once that bolt here compresses the whole thing, you should end up with 25 thousandths. Today we're bringing the lower dash panel to get media blasted. We can't go with something as aggressive as sand because there's a faux leather texture printed on that steel, so it's got to be something that's less aggressive, like plastic beads, glass beads. You could also soda blast, although you just have to remove the little film that stays after the blast. As you can see, the face is not that rusted, but on the other side it's another story. There's nothing rotten, there's nothing that goes right through, so very confident that we're gonna get a really nice piece. Alright, so I painted the lower dash panel with 2 coats of epoxy primer. Looks really awesome, even though I'm outside. I've carefully used a microfiber towel with some paint prep between both coats, and it really looks awesome. Did both sides, so there's not going to be any rust in there. Probably going to finish it in my garage because it's getting pretty cold already. Before applying paint to that surface, I made sure to clean everything with a microfiber towel with some pre-paint cleaner, also known as wax and grease remover. This will also take care of any oily residue from fingerprints or any contaminants that would compromise adhesion. The epoxy primer that I used on the bare metal had a recoat window of 72 hours. So this was filmed 24 hours after the initial spray of that epoxy primer. The advantage that gives is I don't need to scuff the whole surface for the paint to adhere, and I have what is called a chemical adhesion, which is the best type of adhesion you can get. The paint that I'm using here is the very popular Color Code series by SEM, or SEM. The color is super white and is the same color as the inside of my dad's 67 Shelby. If you want to retain the original color, you can use Lando Black from SEM, which works very well on this piece. I'm going for something a little bit different with a two-tone of blue and white, complemented by the brushed aluminum accent. I think the look will be amazing while still retaining that classic appearance.
As for the clear coat, I'm using Spray Max 2K Clear. It's a two-part system in a rattle can, which has a hardener on the underside of it that you need to mix prior to application. It has a very nice quality of atomization and a very nice fan pattern. I've used that product in the past and I had no issue. This is a very high quality clear coat and it's the same kind of products that you would use on the outside of your car. Now SEM or SEM also sells a clear coat in their color coat line of products. I've used it in the past and it's a one-part clear coat, so it offers less durability and protection than the Spray Max 2K Clear. It works pretty good on any interior panels, but when I did the doors on my dad's car, the portion that's really close to the window and was exposed to sunlight very soon started to crack and yellow. After a couple years, it's all yellowed up right now and some parts are peeling and cracking. This is why I went with the Spray Max two-part system. They're also sold at about the same price, so you get way better quality with the Spray Max than the one-part system from SEM. Spray Max also offers different levels of luster. I chose the matte finish and I'm very happy with it because it looks like it's not even there. You can't tell on the camera because it's still wet, but trust me, once it dries, you cannot tell that there's a clear coat on it despite having 3 coats of it. And now, after a couple months, here's the final result inside of the car. Now there's a lot of work that's been going on between these two shots and we'll get to it in a future video.